Who was the voice actor that dubbed over most of Sam J. Jones' dialogue in the 1980s cult classic Flash Gordon? How heavy was Max von Sydow's elaborate Ming the Merciless costume? In this movie, Flash was a pro football player, but what was the sport he played in the original comic strip? These and more questions answered on this episode of
Bat Look Cinema, the podcast.
Every 1,000 years, I test each life system in the universe. I visited with mysteries, earthquakes, unpredicted eclipses, strange craters in the wilderness. But if these are taken as natural, I judge that system ignorant and harmless. I spared it. But if the hand of Ming is recognized in these events, I judge that system dangerous to us. I call upon the great god Daizan, and for his greater glory, and for our mutual pleasure, I destroy it utterly. Hi, my name is Zoe. It's spelled Z-O or Z to the O for those of you outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 188th episode of Backlook Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then please tell your family, tell your friends, and tell that dashing, action-oriented, no-nonsense action hero on his sky sled about Backlook Cinema. Now, let's talk about this. When there's a successful property in Hollywood, other studios try to mimic that success. One famous example is Friday the 13th, as it was made to cash in on the success of Halloween. Mac and Me was made because of the phenomenon that was known as E.T., the extraterrestrial. In more recent years, both Warner Brothers and Universal had attempted to create an over-encompassing movie universe of films in order to copy the success of Marvel Studios and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This dynamic of imitation has been around for a long time. In a bygone era, circa 1933, there was a very popular newspaper comic called Buck Rogers. King Features Syndicate, a distribution and animation studio, wanted their own space hero to take advantage of the popularity of that comic. So they tapped Alex Raymond, one of their staff artists, to write a hit comic strip. Raymond wrote a loose adaptation of the Philip Wilde novel called When Worlds Collide, published in 1933, as the initial story for the hero and comic that Raymond called Flash Gordon. King Features assigned ghostwriter Don Moore to assist with the writing. The Flash Gordon comic strip was first published in newspapers on January 7th, 1934, and, like Buck Rogers before it, became an instant sensation. It spawned all types of merchandise and was soon adapted into radio serials starring Gale Gordon and film serials starring Buster Crabbe. There have been a couple of TV adaptations, my favorite being The New Adventures of Flash Gordon from Filmation from 1979 to 1982. It was an animated series. In the 1970s, a young filmmaker was so inspired by the Flash Gordon film serials that he attempted to obtain the rights to create a modern interpretation of the film serial style. After he failed to acquire the rights, he fell into his backup plan, a little film called Star Wars. In the late 70s, there was a producer named Dino De Laurentiis, who successfully earned the right to make a newer interpretation of the famous newspaper strip character. And that's the movie I want to talk about today, Flash Gordon. So let's go over to the opening credits of Flash Gordon, 1980. For years, Dr. Hans Zarkov, a gifted scientist, studied unusual natural events all over Earth. Strange volcanic eruptions, unexplained earthquakes, and nonsensical hurricanes ravaged the planet. Zarkov tried to warn his colleagues that these events were evidence of an attack from intelligent beings using advanced technology. But he was dismissed as a madman. Using his resources, he built his own rocket ship to launch into space and confront those who would threaten his home world. But he couldn't operate his rocket alone. To that end, he kidnapped the quarterback for the New York Jets and a travel agent who happened to be with him. And they subsequently blasted into space and beyond Earth's orbit to confront what Zarkov believed to be alien perpetrators. Was Zarkov right? Or was he truly a madman that everyone made him out to be? He was right. Flash Gordon was released December 5th, 1980, produced by Starling Films, Film Famous 2, and Dino De Laurentiis Company. It grossed over $27 million in the U.S. and Canada on a reported budget of $20 million. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're doing the math, you will see that this film did not do well, as one might expect from a big name like Flash Gordon. So if you translate that to today's dollars, if you adjust for inflation, that would mean that it would have grossed $105 million in the U.S. and Canada, and the budget would have been $78 million. You can see what the problem is here. It did not, it just barely made back its production budget, and which did not cover the marketing budget. So this film did lose quite a bit of money. And it's kind of a shame because, as you'll see when we talk about what the critics thought of this film versus what the audience thought, you think it would have done better. Flash Gordon starred Sam J. Jones as Flash Gordon, savior of the universe, king of the impossible. You may have also seen Sam Jones in other movies such as Maximum Force, White Force, Jane and the Lost City, or more likely, you saw him in Ted. The thing about Sam Jones is that the movies that he was in a lot of TV appearances too, but the movies that he starred in that came out right around the time that he was doing Flash Gordon, they were, I don't know, action slockfests, I guess. they were definitely, action movies that you would, see on, I don't know, the late show on TV at night. They didn't, these were not classical films, to say the least. And he looks way different in these movies. So I guess it's the blonde hair and the hairstyle, but he's naturally, he has black hair. And so just changing his hairstyle makes him almost unrecognizable. Up next is Melody Anderson. She played Dale Arden. You may have seen her in Dead and Buried, Speed Zone, or Under Surveillance. She's also been in a bunch of TV shows. Max von Sydow, classical actor, plays Ming the Merciless, Emperor of Mongo, ruler of the universe. You may have also seen some of his other films like The Seventh Seal, Minority Report, or Judge Dredd that we covered in episode 55. T'Pol played Dr. Hans Zarkov, and he's been in Fiddler on the Roof, For Your Eyes Only, and The Public Eye. Ornella Muti played Princess Aura. You may have seen her in Oscar, The Most Beautiful Wife, or Stella's Favor. I think these are more international films, except for Oscar is a U.S. film, but some of these other films, I feel like they are, they're not main U.S. staples. Timothy Dalton played Prince Baron of Arborea. And he's also been in The Living Daylights, Hot Fuzz, and The Rocketeer. Brian Blessed played Prince Voltan of Sky City. And he's also appeared in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Tarzan from 1999, and Much Ado About Nothing from 1993. Peter Wingard played General Clytus, and he's been in The Innocents and Night of the Eagle. And rounding out the cast, at least as I am covering them, is Mariangela Malato. She plays General Kala, and you may have seen her in Swept Away or Love and Anarchy. This movie was directed by Mike Hodges, and some of his other films include Black Rainbow, Get Carter from 1971, The Terminal Man, A Prayer for the Dying, or Pulp. I am not familiar with any of these films except for Get Carter, and the only reason I'm familiar with Get Carter is because of the remake with Sylvester Stallone. Written by Lorenzo Semple Jr., Michael Allen, and Alex Raymond. So Semple, when I read about this film, it seems like he's the most responsible for the script. He's also written 3 Days of the Condor, Never Say Never Again, Pretty Poison, Sheena, and King Kong from 1976. Allen wrote fewer movies, and some of the movies he's written are Enter the Dragon, Truck Turner, and I'll Be Home for Christmas. And of course, Raymond was the creator of Flash Gordon's, and he created that character for King Features Syndicate. The music was composed by Howard Blake and Queen. Blake has also composed music for A Midsummer Night's Dream from 1996, Amityville 3D, The Rainbow Boys, The Duelists, The Lords of Discipline, and 10. But we didn't hear much of the composition that he wrote for this movie, although we can credit the music to Queen, because when you think of Flash Gordon, you think of the main theme and you think of Queen. And Queen is one of the things that makes this movie iconic. Queen is also responsible for the iconic soundtrack in Highlander. Now, Howard Blake wrote the score on a tight deadline, and Queen incorporated Blake's work into their musical arrangement. In the end, most of the music that Blake wrote for the movie went unused, so we don't hear most of it. Almost all of the music heard in Flash Gordon is from Queen. The undeniably iconic Flash's theme was written by Brian May. So that's it for the opening credits. I just have the usual announcements. The first usual announcement is that I am still promoting backclickcinema.com/shop for you to check out some great merchandise there, and also still working on my eBay shop, Bazaar de Alonso. It's not up yet. Still working on it. And now that we got that out the way, let's check out our favorite parts. So, this is definitely one of those movies where it's hard to tease out a theme, but mainly you have a group of people. They're all being oppressed by a single power. And if they were only team up, they could overcome the oppression that they're under. So I think the theme of this movie is basically like the overall theme of this movie is to team up for the greater good, like to put aside your differences, like overlook the little things so that you can overcome the big things. In this movie, Flash Gordon is the unifying force for the people of Mongo to rally behind, because everybody in Mongo is being oppressed by being the merciless. But at the same time, they're squabbling among each other. But if they would learn to set aside their individual squabbles, they could lift the oppression that overwhelms all of them. So that is what I've been able to tease out from this movie. And I think that's sort of the theme of Flash Gordon as a series as a whole. Well, the various, series that we read the Adventures of Flash Gordon in, at least the ones that I've seen. I guess really I've only seen, the Adventures of Flash Gordon and this movie. And I've also seen them in Adventures, what's it called? Defenders of the Earth. But that's an overall different type of Flash Gordon appearance. The thing about this movie is that when I watched it when I was growing up, this was one of my favorite movies. Like, I absolutely love this movie. And at the end of the movie, it kind of gives you a question like, the end? Question mark? The main villain you think is defeated. It feels like he comes back. So you're thinking that, yes, there will be a sequel. And I waited and I waited and I waited, and the sequel never came. And I was absolutely enamored. Now, on this rewatch, and I actually rewatched this a couple of times, because the first time I kept nodding off. And when I was nodding off, I was like, well, maybe I'm just tired. And then I watched it the second time. I was like, nope, I'm not tired. This movie is a little slow. It feels a little slow now. I feel like this movie kind of needed to pick up the pace. And so maybe the pacing is off. It feels, I remember it being way faster when I was growing up. But now it feels a little slow. And I mean, that's not my only criticism of the movie, but that's my main criticism. But other than that, there's so much I like about the movie. So the number one thing I love about this movie is Queen. It's the music. It's like, it starts off with the music. Like when you get to the opening credits, it's Queen, and it really gets you pumped up for this movie. They really did the right thing. And what I love, the thing I love about the credits is that it's showing the inspiration for this movie. So as you're listening to the music, and you see the credits flash across the screen, who's starring in the movie and whatever, there are panels from the Flash Gordon comic strip. So the thing that inspired it. And then when you get into the movie, you can see that inspiration on the screen. So that's a beautiful thing. So I really love the overall soundtrack. I listen to the soundtrack every now and then because it's so iconic and so impactful. Just, having Queen go, Flash, he's defender of the universe. I know that sounds bad. I admit that. And yet I can't help but sing it. Also, the costumes are outstanding. They really outdid themselves. And I really should have did a credit for the costume designer, but I didn't put that down. I didn't make a note of it, but the costumes, I feel like, were ripped directly from the comics that inspired them. They were elaborate, audacious. They were Ming himself. Actually, both Ming and Flash had a lot of costume changes. Dale went through a couple of costume changes. Even Dr. Zolkov had a couple of costume changes. I think really, only the Hawkman, the Tree Man, and, General Clytus, I think they're the only ones who didn't actually go through elaborate costume changes. But like the main characters pretty much and went through these very creative, very imaginative costumes. So much color. It's like, you would think that this movie inspired the Power Rangers. So much color. Lots of red. I think they use red to great effect in this movie. it's Ming's color. So red is everywhere. And every like area had like a theme. You had Ming's red. You had the Treeman's green. Sky City was more of a silver theme because the Hawkman's wings were kind of a silver bronze color. The men anyway. Some of the women had these, I don't even know. It's like a reddish color, but it's not quite red. I don't want to say it's pink, maybe fuchsia, but that might be the wrong word. I don't know colors that well. It's one of those in between colors, in between, in between red and orange somewheres. But it's like, it's all wonderful. So the costumes, though for some people were very uncomfortable, were outstanding. I love the sets. The sets complement the costumes perfectly. Ming's throne room was fantastical. It's like the benefit of watching the movie multiple times is that you get to see stuff that you hadn't seen before. And so that was seeing these things is just a visual treat. And each like main location had their own personality. And it's like they really did an outstanding job. I mean, the thing is that even though the movie is a little bit slow, at least you got something to look at, you know, you got the costumes, you got the sets that they really do give you a lot to look at. Some of my favorite scenes were, I'll go back to like the opening scene in the throne room. There is Flash and he's captured by Ming. Actually, he's captured. It's like when they first land, they take the Earthlings to Ming's throne room. And at the same time, you have the different peoples of Mongo. They gather together and they're each offering Ming tribute. And in my imagination, I don't think these are like all of the different peoples of Mongo, just some of them. Like in my imagination, there are so many different people of Mongo that he can't have them all show up to give their tribute. So I figured that they all have their days on when they can give tribute. So on this particular day, he has the Treeman, the Hawkman, and I don't know what to call them. I guess they're the Aurelians, but they were a different type of people. Oh no, the Ardentans or the Ardentians. I think that's what they're called. So they all show up to give their tributes. And this also causes a question, because when I watched this movie, one of the things that I was kind of annoyed by, at least like when I was growing up, one of the things I was annoyed by was the lack of the Lion Men. Because in the cartoons, you had the Lion Men, and the Lion Man was Prince Thune, and he was one of Flash's greatest allies, and he was one of my favorite characters because he was a lion man, and I have an affection for lions. I like lions. I like the Lion Man, and I didn't understand why the Lion Man wasn't in this movie. It wasn't probably due to budgetary constraints, because, you know, having an elaborate lion costume would have been a lot of money. But on my watch and rewatch of this movie, I come to realize, wait a minute, this guy is calling himself Prince Thune. So what happened is that Ming is asking for the tributes, and I guess these are gifts that the people give to Ming the Merciless, either gifts or taxes or something like that. So anyways, he calls forth Prince Thune of Ardentia, and I'm like, wait, Prince Thune, it's not supposed to be the Lion Man? And then when I did the research, like, yes, Prince Thune is supposed to be the Lion Man, but they basically changed that character. So in this movie, the lion, instead of lion people, they have like a tribe of black people, and they are dressed in these golden metal, or these I guess gold decoration. It's like they're covered in gold medallions that are clinking and clanking as they move around. And Ming tells them to offer their tribute, and they say they don't have any tribute because, you know, their land or their moon or the Mongols' geography is confusing. Their area was blasted by Ming, and so they don't have anything to give Ming but undying loyalty, or loyalty without measure. And so Ming says, okay, then fall on your sword. Of course, Prince Thun refuses to fall on the sword and instead shouts death to Ming and starts to attack Ming. And he's in the act of swinging his sword towards Ming. He's frozen in place by a floating robot belonging to the court. And then while Prince Thun is frozen, Ming unwraps the man's fingers and stabs him with his own sword. And the man happens to have blue blood. Now, what's interesting about this is that they kind of continued the trope of the first person being killed in a movie is a black person. And this isn't even a horror movie, but that's how they're doing it. And I didn't catch on it until later on the rewatch. And then that's the only time this particular tribe of people is seen in the movie. And I think that's one of the shames of this movie. This movie could have been so much better if at the final battle you had all of the tribes involved in the final battle. So, you know, Flash Gordon managed to get the lizard men, and then the hawkmen were in the battle, but they're the only like large fighting force that's in the final battle. Like you see the tree men or the tree people on their own area, but they don't like rise up and go to Ming's palace and attack Ming. Like you don't see the tree people in the final battle. You don't see the Argentians in the final battle. And that could have been awesome if you had gathered all of those groups of people and they were part of the final battle. That would have vastly improved this movie. But we didn't get that. Another favorite part I had was later on in the movie, there is the stump challenge. So this is Flash Gordon he's supposed to be a guest of the tree people. So there's this dynamic where you have Ming's daughter, Princess Aura, and Prince Baron of Arborea. They're supposed to be betrothed or at least lovers or something like that. But Aura is getting down with everybody. Like she will basically, I'll put this politically correct. She's having relationships with anybody that she needs favors from. So she's passing herself around for favors. And Prince Baron isn't a dummy. He kind of knows that he doesn't have like exclusive, like Princess Aura isn't exclusive to him. And so he can't help himself. Like he needs to be with her, but he's also annoyed by the fact that they don't have an exclusive relationship. So that's their relationship. The princess rescues Flash from Ming and spirits him away to Arborea. And she goes to Prince Baron and asks Prince Baron to basically hide him until they can figure out what to do with him. I think that she wants to whisk Flash away to a hidden moon that she has where they can be together. And Prince Baron already doesn't like Flash and is not inclined to do what the princess says. But the princess leaves to go back to Ming. So now Prince Baron is stuck with Flash. And so instead of giving Flash like a room, he sticks Flash in a cave. It's not even a cave. He sticks Flash in a cage that's in the swamp. And so basically leaves them there, presumably until the princess returns. But he would rather kill Flash. So he and his cohorts, they cook up a plan where they pretend Flash escaped. Like they help him escape. But the guy who is helping Flash escape takes him through this sacred area, and then betrays Flash. And the area is so sacred that now Flash has to do this tree stump ceremony in order to prove that he has a right to be. Well, that's his punishment. His punishment for trespassing on the religious area is to engage in a tree stump ceremony. Now, the tree stump ceremony is that they have this tree stump there. It's got all of these holes in the tree stump. And within it, it's this beast that will sting you if you put your hand where he's at. Now, the beast can move freely around the inside of the stump. So the challenge is that the tree people, they stick their hand in the stump. And if the beast doesn't sting them, then they pass a manhood test. So we see earlier in the movie, there's a young man, he's ready for the tree stump test. And so he chooses one of the holes that's in the stump. He sticks his hand in the stump and he gets stung. And the pain is so horrible that he asks for Prince Baron to end his life. And Prince Baron obliges because apparently even besides the painful sting, you go into madness and then you die. Prince Baron forces Flash to participate in this ceremony, and each of them have to stick their hands in the tree stump. So what's interesting about this is that it's not just that he's forcing Flash to stick his hand in the stump. Prince Baron is also sticking his hand in the stump. And I think he even sticks his hand in first to goad Flash into sticking his hand in. Like he says, you need to stick your hand in, and Flash goes, no, I'm not sticking my hand in there. And then Prince Baron says, you're a coward. And then he sticks his own hand in the stump, pulls it out. And then Flash sticks his hand, pulls it out. And then Baron sticks his hand, pulls it out. And then Flash sticks his hand, pulls it out. And then Prince Baron says, now do it again. It's like, you're changing the rules? And Prince Baron says, yeah, I'm changing the rules. Stick your hand in it again. Because Prince Baron knows that you can only stick your hand in the stump so many times before you get stung. It's like he was lucky when he did it the first 2 times. And so Flash sticks his hands in, and then he's stung, pulls his hands out, and he starts begging the prince to kill him because the pain is so horrible and he doesn't want to go mad. So, the prince pulls out a sword, and then just as the prince is pulling out a sword, Flash rushes him, and he's able to disarm the prince. And it's like, yeah, I got you. That dialogue is this movie is campy, but the dialogue is almost unforgivable. But I love that part. It's the most suspenseful part of the movie. And it's a very good part. It could have been better. Everything about this movie could have been better, but I really enjoyed that part. It tickled me. And my last favorite thing, last but not least, is Voltan, Prince Voltan of Sky City. Brian Blessed does an incredible performance. I love him because he knows what movies he's in. He not only does he know what movie he's in, but he's bringing the audience along. He's the most cheerful, the most delightful. There's a bit in the beginning and where everybody is doing their tributes. It's a scene that I described earlier. And the Hawkmen are giving their tribute. And it's this weird crystalline thing that they want to present to Ming. And then as they're presenting their tribute, the Treemen show up, led by Prince Baron, and accuses the Hawkmen of stealing, of being thieves, because the tribute that Prince Voltan was presenting, Prince Baron is claiming was stolen from the Treemen. And he's like, you thief, you stole that from us. That was supposed to be our tribute to Ming the Merciless. And then they start to get into a fight. The Baron pulls out his sword. The Hawkman has this huge cudgel, and he's like, ah, and he's ready to strike. And then you have General Clytus. He tells him to stop. He's like, only, no one is killed in the Emperor's palace without the express permission of the Emperor. So they kind of relax their fighting stance. It's like they're about to put their weapons down. And then Voltan is like, ah, he's like, he's about to strike again. And Clytus has to say, Prince Voltan, if you don't stop, we're going to kill your daughter. And so Prince Voltan, he's like, hail Ming, right? But it's like his battle cry is a blessing. It's a blessing to anybody who watches this movie. He's so fun to watch just because he's so joyful. Just saying his corny lines as best as he can. And it's like, he says his lines like he believes in his lines, right? He's so amazing. There's another part where where everybody talks about this part. So when he finds out that Flash Gordon is alive, he's like, Gordon's alive? We all love that part. And what's great about that is Brian Blessed actually loves this role. And so anytime he comes across somebody that asks him, he will say that. It's like, if you see him on the street, it's like, Mr. Blessed, could you say that line? And he will say, Gordon's alive? He'll do it for you. He has no shame. He loves that movie. He loves his role in the movie, and he loves saying that line. And then one of the lines I like that he says is, when he's, and it's Hawkman, and they're doing an assault on one of Ming's flying ships, one of his rocket ships. And so he gives command to attack, and he's like, first wave, dive. Second wave, dive. It's so enthusiastic. It's amazing. I also heard that he had actually gotten hurt on set. Like they're hoisting the Hawkmen by wires for them to, to simulate the flying around. And his broke, and he hit the deck. He hit the stage, and he hit it hard. And he basically bruised something. Something was bruised or something was broken. I think he broke his leg or something like that. But he never let on that he was hurt. He just told everybody, let's continue with the scene, because he didn't want to slow the movie down. So he continued with his role, even though he was hurt. He continued with his role because he believed in the project so much. And that's just amazing. So I loved Voltan. I loved Brian Blessed. And then there are other people that I mentioned. There are a lot of great scenes in the movie. Like, General Clytus has great moments in this movie. Has fantastic line delivery. General Kala, even though her role wasn't as big, but still she's doing some of the goofiest things in the movie. Everybody has spectacular deaths. General Clytus is thrown upon this platform that has spikes in it, and then after he's thrown on these spikes, the spikes pierce most of his body, and his eyes and his tongue bulges out. Clytus is a striking figure with a gold metallic mask, and apparently a a right arm that doesn't move. It's like encased in gold and it doesn't move. And like we don't know the story behind that. And unless you read the extra material, like there are comics based on this movie, unless you read those comics, you'll never know why. They don't explain it, and they don't have to. And then when General Kala dies, she starts to melt. She's melting into black ink. So everybody is wild. Everybody has this wild ending in this movie. One of the things I didn't mention, I also loved Ming's wedding vows. I know I'm cheating. I'm only supposed to have 5 favorite things, but I'm just kind of going through certain things that you might like. And that not only do I like these things, but I'm pretty sure that I'm missing a lot of people's favorite parts in this movie. But I do want to go over Ming's wedding vows. So he's getting married to Dale Arden, and the preacher or whatever, the master of ceremonies, he's leading, he's asking the wedding vows for Ming to answer. One of the first question is, do you promise to take Dale Arden as your empress for the hour? And Ming says, of the hour? Yes. I think the implication is that he's only marrying her for an hour. So that's wild. Then he says, do you promise to use her as you will? And Ming says, certainly. Use her as you will. That's just enjoyable. And then one of my favorite ones is not to blast her into space. And Ming gives this dude the stink eye. Like, it looks like, are you seriously telling me what I can't do? And then the MC catches himself and he says, until you grow weary of her. And Ming says, I do. And Dale says, I do not. Also, Dale, the characterizations of the, the people in here, they're pretty good. Dr. Zarkov is pretty good. He kidnaps the two heroes, and then, in a weird way, they actually have to work together after being kidnapped. His whole plan was, he knows that the Earth is being attacked by an extremely intelligent and technologically advanced people, that he's convinced of that. So he builds a spaceship. When I think about him building a spaceship, I think about, it never occurred to me that would happen in real life, that a private person would build their own spaceship. It felt to me like the most science fiction thing that could happen in a movie is a person building their own spaceship, because at the time, this is the province of governments, and still for most governments, it's the province of governments. But nowadays, we actually have private companies building spaceships, and that feels like a new thing. So we have, it's like, it's old hat now. It's old hat by now. There are people being born that have never known that the United States had its own space program that was funded by the people of the United States. They will only know private companies and their spaceships. So that's amazing. That Zarkov, he had the resources. So apparently Zarkov is a billionaire. Or I guess if it's 1980s, he could be a millionaire because of inflation. He's a millionaire. He built his own spaceship, but he has to kidnap people in order to operate the spaceship. His whole plan was at first he was going to take his assistants, but his assistant kind of escaped. So he kidnaps Flash Gordon and Dale. And his whole plan was to just take Dale and blast off into space to fight alien beings with advanced technology. Just him and Dale. Because he was kicking Flash off the spaceship so that Flash can tell the rest of the world what he did. But shenanigans ensue and Flash ends up in the spaceship with Dale, with Zarkov. So now it's just the three of them. So the three of them are supposed to fight this advanced civilization with God knows what type of technology, certainly the type of technology that can cause earthquakes and hurricanes on the earth. And apparently unexplained eclipses. Like they can do a lot of crazy things to the earth. And these three people are going to stop all of that. That's wild. That's, I think Dr. Zarkov is mad. Like he was right, but he was still mad because there's not something that you can do with three people. So there's that. Another aspect of the movie, like it's like, even though the movie is extremely campy, there's a little bit of inspired writing. So one of the things that you learn in the beginning of the film, you actually hear Ming's voice, and Ming is telling Clytus that he wants to destroy the earth because he's bored. But then later on in the film, you find the real reason. And I don't even think this is something that Clytus knows. And Clytus knows everything about Ming, but I don't think he knows the real reason why Ming wants to destroy the earth. And that's the dialogue that I read in the beginning of this episode, is that he tells Zarkov that the reason that he attacked Earth was that every 1,000 years he goes and he visits certain phenomena on life planets across the universe, or life systems. So life systems are planets with life on them. So he gives earthquakes and hurricanes and all these phenomena. And if the people on that planet think that they're natural, then he leaves them alone. Ming leaves those planets alone. But if the people on the planet think that it's an intelligence doing something to them, that, and Ming describes, if the people see the hand of Ming in these events, then he sees that planet as a threat and he destroys them. So the real reason that he's destroying Earth, because every time they ask him, why are you destroying our planet? Why are you attacking our planet? Ming's answer is, why not? Right? Because I can, because it's there, because I'm bored. But the real reason is because the people recognize him as a threat. Well, he recognizes them as a threat because they recognize that he's doing stuff to them. In reality, the only person that realizes that the disasters that are hitting Earth are unnatural disasters was Dr. Zarkov. So the reason Ming is telling Zarkov about the real reason that he's destroying Earth is because Zarkov was the one guy on the whole planet who knew that the disasters were unnatural. Zarkov was the man who recognized that the hand of Ming existed. So therefore, Earth must be destroyed, and Zarkov's mind needed to be wiped. And then there's this thing where they try to wipe his mind, but because he's reciting Shakespeare and stuff, he's able to keep them from wiping his mind. So there's that. I also want to recognize how Dale, even though she was kidnapped, she was able to rescue herself. She got herself out of captivity, where Flash Gordon needed to be rescued by a treacherous princess. So that's all pretty neat. I like the way they kind of twisted around some of the tropes. I also want to touch on how Mongo's geography seems crazy. You never actually see Mongo as a planet on the movie or in the movie. Like you see Dr. Zarkov's spaceship, you see it in space, it travels for a time, and then it enters some kind of vortex, and then suddenly it's on Mongo. But you don't actually see a planet. So they never actually kind of explain it or anything. But it seems like Mongo is more of a different dimension or a different reality or a different universe. It's hard to say because you never actually see the planet, because they have to actually travel through a vortex or portal to actually get to Mongo. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that Mongo, they use, on Mongo or in this movie, they use astrophysical terms to describe things like weirdly. Like when we think of Star Wars and we think of something like that happening where they're using astrophysics terms incorrectly, we go to that line where Han Solo says it's the ship that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs, and which doesn't make any sense because a parsec is a measure of space, not a measure of time. So and Star Wars went through great lengths to correct that line, to make that line make sense. And so the ship that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. That's a classic line of Star Wars. But it's worse in Flash Gordon, because in Flash Gordon, you have objects that are described as moons that don't look like moons. They're not even in space. Wherever they are, it looks like they're in Mongo's atmosphere. Like they're floating in Mongo skies. They're not actually in space. And they don't even really look like moons. Like they show Arborea and it's described as a moon, and it's like half a planet. Like the top off the planet is kind of like scooped off, and you see the trees off the, on that top part of the planet. And it's what the top part of this round ball of a rock, I guess. So it's a ball. It's a round rock, and the top of the rock is kind of like shaved off a little bit. And on that shaved off part, you have trees, and they call that a moon. And I'm just saying it don't look like a moon to me. And then there are floating mountains or floating rocks in another part of Mongo, and those are also described as moons. And I'm just saying they don't look like moons to me. So that's the thing. And you don't really get a sense of the geography of this area. Is it really a planet? It's hard to say. So that's one of the things about Mongo. It doesn't feel like a world or a planet in a traditional sense. Lastly, there's been much talk about Ming the Merciless for a very long time. Like I think even from the very first comic being Asian coded. So I don't know if I hadn't actually looked at the comic strip all that much. I've seen some pictures of Ming from the comic, and from my perspective, he kind of just I don't think they're trying to draw him as Asian, but he's definitely looks like a white man wearing Asian garb. And that theme is kind of carried throughout every time Ming the Merciless is depicted. So there is and they carry that same line language in this movie, and it just looks fantastic. Like I don't really see it as cultural appropriation, more like Asian inspired. They took a lot of imagery from Asian dress or Asian fashion, particularly from maybe ancient Chinese imperial wardrobe, it seems. And I think that's how they dressed this version of Ming up. And then there's also the facial hair that kind of reminds you, particularly his beard mustache, that kind of reminds you of almost a stereotypical look at ancient Asian peoples. But at the same time, he's clearly not Asian. Like they didn't try to make him his physical features. They didn't try to make him look Asian. And at the same time, they didn't try to make him sound Asian. He sounds like Max von Sydow, like really hamming it up. And it's great. It's great to see Max von Sydow just give it his all in this movie. So it's like, it's nothing subtle about his performance, and it's fantastic. Even though it's and I don't know the conversations that like maybe Asian people or Chinese people or Japanese people or Korean people, I don't know what their perception of Ming the Merciless is. Do they consider it appropriation, or do they consider it an homage, or do they consider it inspired by Asian dress? I'm not exactly sure, but that is how I've always perceived it. And that is how I'm perceiving it now. It is, at the very least, not as egregious as what they did in Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. And probably nothing is as egregious as that. Or what happened in the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. Not as egregious as that movie either. So that's it for my favorite parts and some of the things I wanted to talk about the film. So what are your favorite parts? What are some of the things that you noticed about the film that I missed? Why don't you let me know in the comments below? You can, if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can leave it in a comment in the comment section. Otherwise, you can write a comment and send it to fanmail at backlookcinema.com, or even go to social media. You can go to the website and click on the social media handle, maybe leave a comment. My social media handle is Backlook Cinema on all of the socials, or most of them. I'm not actually monitoring all the socials. I'll let you know the main ones near the end of the episode. So that's it for our favorite parts. And now let's talk about the top 10 trivia. This is the Trivia Top 10. I get most of this from IMDb. These are the most interesting ones I found. Flash jumping towards the camera screaming, "Yeah!" was improvised by Sam J. Jones because nobody could figure out how to end the movie. You know what? That's as good an ending as anyone could come up with. It's good. Max von Sydow's Ming costume weighed over 70 pounds. He could only stand in it for a few minutes at a time, which is that's crazy. That's anybody talk about how easy acting is and how anybody can do it. I challenge you to wear this 70-pound costume. In the original script, when Flash is sentenced to death by Ming, Dale bursts out that Ming is absolutely merciless. Ming is enthralled with the description and immediately starts calling himself Ming the Merciless. I love that. I wish they kept that from the original script. It feels so in character for Ming to, like, I imagine the expression on von Sydow's face and him mulling over the name Ming the Merciless and then deciding to call himself Ming the Merciless. I would have loved to have seen that, but obviously they ripped that. They chose to go in a different direction, but I wish they kept that in. For the scene in which Dale turns into a giant spider for a dream sequence, Melody Anderson spent 6 hours getting painted green, wearing fake eyes and fangs, with a headpiece that weighed over 20 pounds. When Mike Hodges, the director, came in, he said, "This is wonderful, but we can't use this. It has absolutely nothing to do with the script." To that, I say, was there anything in this movie that had anything to do with the script? Dino De Laurentiis had never heard of Queen before making this film. The band was approached for the gig in 1979, and they were immediately interested. The manager arranged a meeting with De Laurentiis to discuss the opportunity, and he allegedly asked, "Who are the Queens?" That's crazy. In the original comic strip, Flash was a polo player at Yale, but that was a less popular sport by 1980. than it had been in 1934. So Flash became a New York Jets quarterback. So that makes sense. Give him a more recognizable or popular occupation. In the finished film, George Harris's dialogue as Prince Thune of Argentia was dubbed with a much deeper voice. However, Harris's actual unretouched vocal track is featured on the Queen soundtrack album, indicating that the change must have been fairly late in the post-production. In the original comics, Prince Thune was a lion man who was one of Flash's most loyal allies and wasn't in earlier drafts of the script, and there were no attempts on Ming's life. Instead, Ming showed Flash, Dale, and Zarkov how mindlessly loyal his guards were by having one commit suicide in front of them. This kind of reminds me of what happened in Conan the Barbarian. And so you had Thulsa Doom, and Thulsa Doom was at this area, and in this area there was like a large cliff, but his followers are all around this area, including on top of the cliff, and he had captured Conan and dragged him, and he's showing Conan what true power is. And he had caused one of his followers that were on the top of the cliff face to jump off the cliff and fall to her death. And he exclaims to Conan, "That is real power." Like, he used to think that real power was how many people that you can kill with your bare hands and how strong you physically were. But he had come to understand that true power is the ability to cause people to kill themselves on your behalf. And this is something that was expressed early in the Flash Gordon script, where Ming was going to have one of his followers just commit suicide in front of him. But instead, they rewrote that so he tells Prince Thune to fall on his sword to prove how loyal he was. But of course, Prince Thune was like, "Death to Ming," right? and Ming had to do the dirty work of killing Prince Thune himself. The actors playing the Hawkmen couldn't sit down because the costumes would hurt their backs. Melanie Anderson told Starlog magazine,
"They could never sit down because when they did, their wings would dig into their backs. When we had a rest period, you'd see all these guys lying on their stomachs with wings like they were really ready to take off. It was a very funny sight."
According to Brian Blessed, he had to sit on a perch. Now, there is a point in the film where you can see him sitting on kind of a stool at a dinner table. So I'm not exactly sure how much weight that he was putting on that stool. But, yeah, those costumes were very uncomfortable. Sam J. Jones had a falling out with Dilo De Laurentiis over a perceived lack of payment and was not called back to work during the second unit shoot and post-production. Most of Jones's dialogue was dubbed. For years, the identity of the voice actor who provided the voice was unknown, even to Jones himself. In October 2017, a user on a science fiction and fantasy Stack Exchange forum suggested that the voice actor was likely Peter Marinker, based on a compilation of samples of Marinker's work in anime dubs for manga entertainment. Based on this evidence, the credit was added to various film credit databases and mentioned in other sources and reviews. In a 2020 interview with filmmaker Dominique Hailstone, Marinker confirmed that he was indeed responsible for looping most of Jones's dialogue in secret, but that some of Jones's lines were left intact based on the strength of his performance in them. That's another thing that's funny about this film. It does look like this film was horribly dubbed. And some of the voices don't look, they don't sound like they're coming out of the actor's mouth. But, I had known about most of Sam Jones's dialogue being dubbed over, but I didn't realize they had kept some of that dialogue that he had said. So apparently their voices match pretty good. Lastly, according to the book, Dino, the life and film of Dino De Laurentiis, Sam J. Jones kept getting into fights during the filming of the movie. At one point, Jones was in a hospital with a big scrape on his face, and De Laurentiis himself barged into the operating room to make sure they fixed his face so as to not leave visible scars. But Jones kept causing trouble. And then at Christmas, he left for Los Angeles and never returned. De Laurentiis recalls that he told Mike Hodges, "We'll keep going with the very best stand-in you can find." So yeah, it seems that Jones was a problem. And maybe, perhaps, if he was not such a problem, he would have had a better career. So that's it for the trivia. Hopefully, I've found something that you didn't know and you were delighted by the information. Now let's go and see what the critics thought. So the critics have it at 83%. The audience has it at 69% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is surprising. And IMDb Reviews has it at 6.5. So really, you have IMDb and the popcorn meter at Rotten Tomatoes. They're kind of matching. But the critics loved it way more than the audience did, which is kind of unusual. Usually you see this kind of discrepancy on really artsy-fartsy films. These, the art house, the independent film circuit, they sometimes get huge positive critic responses, but maybe lukewarm audience response. So it's like the critics see Flash Gordon as an art house film. And they all kind of say the same thing. It's so bad it's good. That's kind of the vibe you get when you read the critical reviews. So, for example, you have Eric Lurio from Greenwich Village Gazette. He writes, "One of the great bad movies of the decade." And bad is in quotations, but yeah, it's like, and it's almost like he's saying it's so bad it's good. David Newsar from Real Film Reviews wrote, "A terminally underwhelming sci-fi epic that may keep small children amused, admittedly, but will leave adults bored to tears." You know what? And I'm kind of feeling that, because I did mention in the beginning of this podcast that it felt kind of slow. I was delighted when I was a child. It feels slow as an adult. He's got something going on there. I think he's right. Jeffrey Lyles from Lyles Movie Files wrote, "While it's not the best of the sci-fi genre, you don't have to go to a galaxy far, far away to enjoy every minute of it." And to this, I agree. There were a lot of positive feedback for this movie on Rotten Tomatoes. It was actually a little bit difficult finding negative feedback. But one of the ones I found was from Jesus Fernandez Santos from El País, Spain. He wrote, "In between brittle skies and other galactic junk, the adults are likely to doze off." He's kind of saying the same thing, that the movie is kind of slow. I'm going to reiterate, it was slower than I remember. So finally, Flash Gordon is, as of this recording, available on Disney Plus. No, not Disney Plus. It's available on Amazon. My next episode is another classic space adventure, but this time it's much closer to home. Join me next time and we'll have a conversation about the spectacular blockbuster known as Armageddon. You can follow us on Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and sometimes Twitter. Please contact us with any questions or comments or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. Please rate and review on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening on YouTube, please like or subscribe or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And so, in that little blurb, you heard the social media that I'm most likely to be on. One last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlick Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, And if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.